Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. As the summer of 1964 was approaching, I was preparing to graduate from high school. And the country was involved in a little struggle called Vietnam. And there was a thing called the draft. And like a seagull circling over me looking for a target, the draft was looming. So I elected to join the Navy rather than find myself in the Army in an unwanted place. The first ship I was on was a destroyer. And this destroyer hadn't been at sea for a while. And so we were preparing to enter the war zone. They decided it would be good to go over and have some gunnery practice. I had never been on a ship before. I had no idea what to expect. I was told it was a 4-hour voyage to get to the gunnery practice area. And sure enough, we left port. And about 2 hours into the voyage, they stopped. And a little later, I noticed a guy in a skin diving suit jumping over the side. And I asked, why is this fellow jumping over the side? Why are we stopped? And I was told, there's a hole in the side of the ship. And he has to put a plug in it. Now, this is the boat I'm taking over to the war zone. I think the recruiter left out some information. Nevertheless, we fixed the hole and we approached the gunnery practice area. And the practice aboard a ship is they always put the new guy in some place he could do the least amount of harm. In my case, they stuck me in the ammunition locker at the very bottom of the ship, along with some other people. And what happens in there is they stack up these projectiles, and they're in bins, and they also have some powders that are in bins. And what you do is you start pulling the projectiles out of the bins, and they go over to a hoist which sends them up. And then as the level begins to descend, there's a little gate you can take off, so you can get to lower levels. And sure enough, the first time they removed the gate, a shell rolled off, fell 5 feet to the metal deck below. You cannot imagine the sound of a 58-pound projectiles hitting a metal deck. Needless to say, we were all frozen in our place, fascinated by this sound. And of course, the shell just doesn't fall and land flat. It has to bounce a few times. Nose to heel, nose to heel. And of course, the nose is this little area where the detonator is. So, in the midst of our fascination, the manager of that spot decides to tell me to pick this shell up, take it 2 decks above to the chief gunner's mate so that he can inspect it. I found that fascinating. So I picked the shell up and I'm holding it tightly and I have to climb this ladder. And what they do in general quarters is they have these large metal hatches. And normally they're open and held open by some large iron bars, but they close them during general quarters and you have a little manhole that you have to twist the cover on to get open to get through the hatch. Well, I picked the shell up and one of the shipmates decided to open this hatch for me. I thought, oh, what a helpful fellow. And I climb up and I squeeze through the hole, and as soon as I get to the other side, I hear the clang of this metal hatch closing and the dog going into place, securing the area. I understand now why he was being helpful. I approach the second ladder and begin to climb it, and now I have a projectile in my hand. I have to open this hatch and raise it up out of the way so I can climb through it and get into the area above me. At the precise moment that my head entered into the hole, boom! They fired the first cannon. That was fascinating. And I did the logical thing. I looked down to see if the shell had exploded. Now, wouldn't that have been a story? How my head regrew my body. I was loaded with energy now. Through the hole I go, over to the chief gunner's mate, set the shell down on the floor, and said, it dropped. Like a rabbit, down the hole, dogging the hatch behind me. If that went off, I wanted to have some metal between it and me. A little later, we got overseas. And one of the things about the Navy, it's a dry ship. So people try and sneak booze aboard the ship. And I was young, and I tried to sneak my bottle aboard the ship, and I succeeded. And I stuck it in a little area I was responsible to clean. Next morning, I get up and find out there's a surprise inspection. And I know where I stuck it, they're going to check for dirt, they're going to find it, I'm dead meat. So I run up there, and I reach in there to grab this bottle of booze, and instead of grabbing the booze, I knock it over, it falls to the middle ground, the bottle shatters, and you cannot believe the smell of whiskey in a confined area. I was desperate. I ran down to the bosun's locker. I got a bucket of pine salt. I ran up, and I could hear the officer approaching. So all I could do was throw this bucket of pine salt into the corner. If you've ever gone through gas training, you have an idea of the effect of pine salt in a confined area. My face burned. My eyes cried. The officer approached, had the same effect, looked around, gave me a 4-0, and down the stairs he went. Ladies and gentlemen, my experiences in the Navy.